What's up, guys? This is Alex Van Houten with Better Daily. Tonight, we are talking about real change, and this workshop is going to be a powerful workshop. We have a lot of stuff to cover with regard to how to stick to your goals. And this is particularly relevant because in the health and fitness world, and even outside of the health and fitness world, in business, maybe sometimes in family, this is something that comes up very frequently. I've made this goal. How do I keep myself connected to this goal? How do I keep myself moving forward? And so tonight we're going to talk about real change, and the pictures in the background will make sense momentarily. So tonight, our agenda, we're going to talk about the difference between goals and betterment. Then we're going to talk about real betterment, 7 questions that we have to answer in order to have powerful and a productive, meaningful way forward, so that we give ourselves a path for our journey, and we can also make sure that we understand what that journey is all about and how we're going to make those things happen. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about bite sizing, the 1%, how we break those goals down to little pieces so that we can actually move forward on them in a meaningful way. So first, some burning questions from the community. When I put out there that I was going to be doing a workshop on goals, I got some questions and messages and whatnot. One, how do I set goals that I can actually achieve? That's an important question. How can I stick to what I say I want? And then last but not least, what's the point? What's the point of the whole goal thing anyway? So the first place we're going to start with this workshop is that goals are insufficient. So you've probably heard SMART goals as a construct, right? If you've done anything in business, or maybe you've done something with regard to, I don't know, education, there's this construct called SMART. And that is, if you're going to make a goal, let's say I want to lose some weight. I would like to lose some weight, Alex. Great. Okay. Then the old way of doing things from a goals perspective was to make it SMART, to make it specific. How much weight do you want to lose? Measurable. How are you going to measure progress with regard to this goal? Achievable. Is it possible? Is weight loss something that's actually possible for you? It specifically with regard to the time frame that you pick for that thing. And then R is realistic. Is this realistic given everything that's going on in your life right now, and your level of education and your level of support, right? The problem with goals is that, one, they're insufficient no matter how good the plan is. And I got my quote from Mike Tyson here: everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. True story. That's the thing about goals, right? Is the best laid plans of mice and men will not always lay out the way you thought they would, right? So I've spent very significant amount of time with people in my practice over the last 16 years, and about, I would say, up until about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, spending a lot of time really laying out goals, specific goals, measurable goals, achievable goals, realistic goals, timely goals, so that we understood what we want in the next 90 days and how we're going to measure those things and how realistic that is, right? The thing is that's all well and good until something unexpected happens. You have your great plan, and you're going to lose those 10 pounds, and you're going to measure it on the scale every Monday, and you're going to make sure that you have the right eating plan, and you've got your program all laid out, and you're going to do that in 90 days, right? That's all well and good until you sprain your ankle. It's all well and good until you wake up and you have the flu. It's all well and good until a family member is ill. It's all well and good until your boss demands more of you at work, or whatever. Insert obstacle here. The point is, goals are insufficient. And tonight, as I'm talking about this, I'm hoping to expand your definition or understanding of aims toward betterment, because goals in and of themselves are insufficient. The plan itself will only work in as far as you can see the future. And, well, none of us know the future, right? So why are goals insufficient? First, the pain of failure isn't that high. Let's be real. If you don't lose 10 pounds in the next 90 days, and I know not everybody's trying to lose 10 pounds, but just as our hypothetical here, if we don't lose 10 pounds in the next 90 days, what's the cost? What's the pain of failure? And for most people, that sort of goal is just not, it's not that painful. It's just not that painful not to lose 10 pounds if you need to lose 10 pounds. It's like, okay, well, I didn't lose 10 pounds. It kind of stinks to wear my fat jeans, but whatever. It's not that big of a deal, right? So for instance, for me, one of the reasons I tell people that Ehlers-Danlos is a blessing to me is because if I don't do what I consistently know is good for me, then I actually wake up in pain. It's painful on a daily basis not to do what's good for me, right? So in my case, the pain of failure is very high for the particular goals that I'm setting for myself. But this is a really important reason why goals for some are insufficient, is that when you set these goals, let's say I want to go for a 30-minute walk every day, or I want to eat better, or I want to lose 10 pounds, or I want to exercise consistently, whatever those goals are, if the pain of failure isn't that high, then it will not be that important to you. It's really all there is to it. That's because priorities wise, we prioritize things on what will cause us the most pain. Well, I need to take care of that first. And you might prioritize or say that a little bit differently, but this is a real thing in health and fitness. The number two reason why goals are insufficient, we'll talk more about this in a bit, is you need more friends. It might not be that important to the people who are important to you for you to reach this goal right now. And I didn't say you need new friends. I'm sure your friends are great, but when it comes to the goals that you've set for yourself that you're having a hard time sticking to, it's very possible that your social support system is not affected by those goals whatsoever, right? So let's say I'm the only person at work who goes for a walk at lunchtime. And maybe I enjoy solitude, so that might be beneficial. But if I'm the only person doing it, then that's a different thing than if me and my best friend go for a walk at lunchtime at work and we have a great conversation during that walk. If I decide not to go on this walk, how does that affect my friend? Well, my friend's going to show up for their walk all by themselves. The same thing goes if you have like a workout buddy at the gym, right? I'm supposed to be there at 6 a.m. to do my workout. If I'm not there at 6 a.m., then my friend has this horribly uncomfortable time period where they're sitting around waiting for the deadbeat who didn't show up today. And that's painful, right? So one of the things about goal setting is that goals can be insufficient when they don't impact your immediate social sphere. When they don't impact your immediate social sphere, if you have not created a safety net of people around you that are affected positively by you achieving this goal, then that's going to be a problem for you. You might also need a coach. Maybe nobody's in your corner. These are not the same thing. Friends and coaches are not the same thing. Friends are like sometimes they'll tell you like it is. Most of the time they have your best in mind. A coach, from a professional perspective, they have no skin in the game. They care about whether or not you reach their goal, but it doesn't personally affect them whether or not you reach your goal. And when you have a coach in your corner, they say the things that other people won't say to you. They ask you the questions that other people won't ask because it's a little too personal. It's a little too tough. I have a boxing background. A coach is the guy in the back who's like, "Hey, stupid, duck when he throws that right. Like, don't do that. Duck, move, go side to side. Where's your cross? Come on, man." And that's what a coach is the voice behind you telling you how you might need to navigate or manage this current obstacle. They can't do the work for you, but the coach can do that. And then last but not least, the way is cloudy. Sometimes goals are insufficient because we don't know the future. We don't know where to start. We don't know how to progress. And we also don't know how to continue because no one knows the future. So thanks, Alex. Thanks for making me all depressed. Goals are insufficient and meaningless. You've completely ruined my night. Don't worry. We're getting somewhere. Tonight we're going to talk about betterment. So I've taken goals and I've deconstructed some of the reasons that they fail and that they're insufficient, no matter how well set they are, no matter how good the construct is. And tonight I'm hoping to introduce the concept of betterment. And if you're here with me in this workshop, that means you're a member of the Better Daily community. So betterment's not a completely new concept to you. The idea that if I became 1% better every day, what would that trajectory look like? And you can see in front of you the power of tiny gains, right? If 1% better every day was mathematically drawn out, then 365 days from now, that's something like 37.78. If you started at 1, right? That doesn't mean anything from a person's perspective. You could be 30 times better than you are right now. Who knows what that actually looks like? But Jordan Peterson says it this way: compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. And as we're talking tonight about how to create aims and to define those things by answering some questions about what we want and how we're going to get there, then we create the path of betterment. And I hope tonight you'll see how that's different from goal setting. And not only different from goal setting, but better than goal setting. So I don't want to get too much farther before taking some questions, but this is where we're going. This is what we're going to tackle tonight. These are the 7 questions that you can answer to achieve better. And really the questions break down to 4 things: why, what, how, and who. And the questions are very simple. In the why category, picture heaven. Picture the best thing you can picture a year from now. What does that look like? What does the best look like that you can imagine for yourself? And I don't mean like, hey, I'm 40 pounds overweight now, and a year from now, I imagine myself jumping on the same boxes that Alex jumps on. Like, let's think, realistically, a year from now, if I did everything right, if I put into practice positive changes. I don't know what those changes are yet, but let's say I put into practice some positive changes and I picture myself a year from now. What does that look like? What's the best case scenario? So that's question 1 under why, the vision. And then 2, what's hell look like? Let's say I don't change anything and this trajectory gets to keep going. The bad habits that I have right now that I know are keeping me from better in my life. What's the worst that can happen a year from now? What's hell look like? Right? So that's why. That's your vision. That's your big picture. Those are 2 questions. If you haven't answered those for yourself, or you haven't thought about them in a while, it's worth asking. The second piece here is what. These are the benchmarks. The question is, what benchmarks are coming up for you this year? And we'll talk more about this in a bit, but these are milestones of progress, things that matter to you, like a birthday. Hey, my birthday is coming up. By my birthday, I would like to do X, Y, Z. Or hey, there's this really interesting race that's going on 3 or 4 months from now. I'd like to deal with that benchmark. Or maybe I have an anniversary, or maybe I'm getting together with family for the holidays, and I'd like to show up as somebody who did something with myself this year, right? And that would be great. So what are my benchmarks? And then number 4, what are your measures? What measures do you want to focus on that are useful and helpful for your goal and relevant, right? So if I would like to lose some weight, it's very possible that weight on the scale is not necessarily the best measure. If I'm trying to get my clothes to fit better and I would like to look better in the mirror, then perhaps my body fat percentage would be better to measure. Or maybe the size of my jeans would be better for me to measure. There's a bunch of different measures that you can take in order to achieve your betterment. And the question is, what measures matter? What measures would help you and help you understand your progress? And we'll talk more about those in a bit. How? So this is how you're actually going to get there. And this really is where the rubber meets the road. So we talked about how goals were insufficient and how betterment's a little bit different. But this question is very simple. You sit on the edge of your bed and you say, what is one thing I need to start doing? And what is one thing I need to stop doing? And that's really that simple. And you could probably ask yourself 2 things. As a coach, I generally ask my clients to name 2 things for me in both of those categories. But man, if you even did one, if you started something you're not doing right now that you know you need to be doing, and if you stopped something right now that you know you need to stop doing, I mean, that would be plenty to start with. And if you were consistent about that, who knows what could happen. And every day you might continue moving on that journey forward in a positive way. And last but not least, this is something that the goal thing misses out completely. And this is who's your support system? Who cares whether or not you move a little closer to heaven and a little further away from hell? Who cares whether or not you show up well at your benchmarks? Who cares whether or not you see progress in your measures? Who cares whether or not you start doing what you would like to start doing and stop doing what you would like to stop doing? Who cares? And if we can answer these 4 questions, and we'll dive into each one of these pieces individually in a second, but if we can answer each one of these 4 questions and we take a moment to do so, it takes about 10 minutes, probably maybe 15, depending on how thoughtful you are on this front and how verbose you are. I like to write a lot. But if you did this, if you ask these questions, you will come up with a much better plan than goals. You will come up with a much better way forward every single day than just laying out smart goals. So we're going to address each one of these in just a second, but I want to open up the floor to questions, thoughts, or comments before moving into each one of these. So if you have something you'd like to say or a question you'd like to throw at me, go ahead and unmute, and we'll stop right here before moving on.
Hey, Alex, I have a question.
Bring it, Katie.
I seem to always do better with short-term goals. A long-term goal, a year seems like a long-term goal to me. Can a person be either or how do I change from short-term to long-term, or how do those go together?
That's actually a really good question. So the reason that is a personality thing, right? So some people would actually say on this call, in fact, I'm interested in just a vote, show of hands, who sees the long term as easier? Who sees the long term as easier? Anybody? These are my head in the clouds people. Okay, these are, I've got a couple people waving their hand. These are my head in the clouds people. They see the future, but they don't know exactly how to get there. Mm-hmm. Right? They like the big picture. It's nice to dream about what's possible, right? And this is a personality trait called openness. That's one of the big 5 personality traits. It's called openness. It's looking at the world in a very large, big picture. You tend to see big picture things. I'm in that category. I hate short-term goals. They drive me bonkers, right? So this whole question of like, what do I need to start doing and stop doing today? Like, I don't want to think about that. I want to think about how cool things could be a year from now if I just got it all right, right? So that said, by a show of hands, who's on the other side of the spectrum? You'd say that, thinking, 3 to 6 weeks in advance, maybe a week at a time is there. Katie's got a hand up. Got a couple other people waving their hands a little there. Yeah. Okay, so part of the answer to that question, Katie, is it's a personality difference. There might be a few people who kind of fall in the middle. A year is a little long and a week's a little short, but that is the rub, is that personality wise, we usually fall into a spectrum of these camps, and the difficult part is putting the two together. So if I make short-term goals, how do I know I'm going in the right direction if I don't know what the overall direction is? I'm just
right. Hey, that's exactly right.
I got 20,000 steps today. Is that good or bad? Well, how's your knee doing? That's because that's the big picture a year from now is I would like to be without injury would be an example. And perhaps 20,000 steps every day is not the best way to get there, right? Maybe my joints won't hold up to that. And so that's the hard part, is to take the big picture and the daily things that we can do, so that the daily things we can do are leading to the big picture. That's the difficult part. That's the hard part, is putting those things together. So you've touched on a really hard thing, and you're right. Some people have an easy job dreaming, and some people have an easy job with the short-term action items.
With doing.
But putting them together is very difficult.
Can you do betterment with short-term goals? It seems like you could.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the goal of these questions, right? Is you can start with the big picture like I have here, because that's the way my brain works, heaven and hell, and then all the way down to what do I need to start doing and stop doing. Or you could flip this completely on its head. You could say, hey, what do I want to start doing? What do I want to stop doing? And start there. And then say,
okay,
when do I want to start and stop doing that until? What's a benchmark? What matters to me, right? Like the Faithful 40 Challenge would be a good example of something like that. A nice short-term thing you can wrap your head around. I'm going to do X, Y, Z for 40 days and see where that leads. And maybe it leads me closer to where I'd like to be, even though I didn't know that. Or maybe I'm like, no, I'm not doing that again. Like fasting every Saturday is stupid. Why would I do that ever again? or something along those lines, right? That's a great question. Thank you for asking.
Sure.
Alex, I've had trouble because, my life's just been so responsive for so long, raising kids and having a job and everything else, that I struggled to set goals because I just found it very frustrating and defeating because I was so busy responding to all the urgent things in life that, it was hard to set goals because I always felt real defeated because it was hard to get them into place.
Mm,
So that's a new season for me to try to be more intentional about setting them. And,
mm,
like a lot of my habits are pretty healthy. So that's been a good thing. But like, I know one of the things that I really struggle with is trying to like track what I eat during the day. Like I'll do it for like 2 days and then I hate it. So yes, that's like one of the things I really struggle to be able to do. I know that if I'm on top of what I eat, getting closer to my weight goals is better. So.
mm,
But then also, like, I'd like to be able to do a pull up, and I haven't really broken down what it's going to take to be able to do that. So it's things like that that I struggle with to break it down into realistic steps.
mm.
I mean, I was at the gym tonight lifting and stuff like that, so it's not like I'm not doing anything. I'm just not as intentional as I could be.
Right. And I want to harken back to that question, who cares? Right. That's the thing, is when you're a parent,
Yes.
your kids really care. And you kind of, if you're a good parent, you also really care that everything, that should be done for parenting is done and whatnot. But that said, when you start, even in this stage of life where your kids don't need so much from you, the same difficulties, the talking about journaling, for instance, like I hate it, I don't want to do that. What if you knew that your journal helped somebody else with their food intake, and whether or not you did that with them had a lot to do with whether or not their goals would progress. And maybe it doesn't matter, but
I
maybe
would do
there,
that in a heartbeat.
right, and maybe there are people in your life who would benefit from that sort of thing, right? And that's the who cares question, is when your kids depend on you, it's not hard to make yourself do things. Like, it's not hard to make yourself do things that you don't want to do, that you hate. What, like, I hate dishes, I just do. But I'm not going to let my kids live in a nasty kitchen, right? And my wife wouldn't appreciate that either. And I don't like getting up at 5 a.m. every day. But if I don't, I'm going to wake up to a carton of eggs on the floor or something. Who
Right.
knows? I have no idea what my 2-year-old's going to do on at 5 a.m. Right. But and I've been sleep deprived and I've done weird things for the point is, when somebody depends on you,
Yes.
you will step up to the plate. And the question is, how do you take things that are personal to you and make them less personal so that it's a little more connected with others? That's the harder question. And so we'll talk about that more in a second. And I think that'll be helpful.
I mean, that's probably how I've been so successful at working out. This morning my running partner got back from Tennessee, so we went for a run. Tonight my weightlifting partner got back from Pittsburgh, so guess what? Lifting weights. At lunchtime my daughter was home and was willing to take a walk, so we grabbed the dog and went out for a walk. And
Right.
so I think the reason I've been successful in my activity is because I've gotten people involved. I just haven't gotten people that will hold me accountable or be encouraged by me journaling what I eat.
I can think of a few, but I'll let them name themselves later.
Well, that's
I'm
fine.
encouraged by her.
Thank you. And this is
I'm
why
always watching you guys' food.
Yes.
But
I love it.
I gotta point this out because I'm a big time goal person, but I don't write them down anymore. And being a parent of 4 kids, especially being a single parent of 4 kids, I didn't have the time to sit down and write them down.
No.
But most of the time I didn't know if I was coming or going. But as a parent, though, you probably are a lot more successful at making goals than you think you are. Because we, like you said, you've got your weightlifting partner came back in, and so you guys lifted weights. you got your running partner came back in, and so you went running, and then you went for that walk. The walk would be another like a short term type thing to get your long term goal in. And if you're trying to do pull ups, one of the big things you can add to your workout would be some type of push up, or
Yeah.
maybe wall push ups or something like that to strengthen the shoulders and whatnot for your pull ups.
Yeah.
But those are things we do on the fly as parents. I mean, and especially KT, owning a business, I imagine she probably never writes her goals down anymore. She just goes and does it.
Yep. Well, that's, I just find like, that breaking it down to step by step it's not something that is intuitive to me. So I get very frustrated and stuck there. So I guess I've probably, found ways around my weaknesses. But yeah, I would like to be better at that all the way around between work and health. But Kate, thank you, because I needed that encouragement. My friends here, they don't want to know because they're not as healthy, so they don't want to know what I'm eating or working out.
I was having a conversation with somebody today about how weird it would be if people in our workplace were nearly as interested in our betterment as our little community is interested in our betterment. Like, did you get your steps today? Like, wait, how much protein did you eat? Like, did you lift? Like, no, if that was happening in the workplace on an everyday basis, you'd be like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, actually, these are nice.
I would enjoy it, but not everybody does.
I have some people, I haven't been in the office in, year and a half, but, back before then, I did have people interested in health that, we help encourage each other. So that was nice. But my friend group from high school that's in my community, they just get annoyed at me. So I got to keep my mouth shut.
Well, I think that when we get to the support part, the who cares part, I think I'd really like to revisit this because I think that'll be really helpful. So we're going to move then to heaven and hell. So we're going to move through this from top to bottom and start here. Now, I use this picture on purpose because on the left would be one of my, like, if you asked, like, what would heaven be to you, Alex? I'm like, oh, a mountain lake with like the sky just right and the sun coming through. And then I have a friend of mine who, if you asked her what her hell would look like, then she would describe the same thing, but hell for her is getting there. Like a mountain with nobody around and nothing to eat, and there's a lake and stuff, and I have to trudge up this like 8-mile trail to get there. Like, oh. But jokes aside, heaven and hell, like, what's best? What's the best you can imagine, and what's the worst you can imagine? It's very subjective and different for everybody. And I don't want to get caught in the weeds of the subjectivity here, but I do want to say that most of the people that I work with, when we first start working together, they have a very, very tiny picture of what better could look like. And that's what they tell me. But in the big scheme of things, their short-term goals could be made in a different context. I'll give you an example. So I'm working with a guy right now, and when he first talked to me, he was like, Alex, I just need to see some weight loss progress. I need to lose 20 pounds as quickly as possible. And so I've had this conversation like 500 times. So I'm listening to him talk. And so I asked, I said, hey, does it matter to you if we lose 20 pounds in the next 6 weeks? Does it matter to you if a year from now you still weigh the same as you do now? Like, the 20 pounds have come back. Does it matter to you? And he's like, well, yeah, it matters to me. If I lose 20 pounds, I want it to stay gone. I was like, all right. So what I'm hearing is, I want to lose weight in a way that is sustainable and consistent for the long term. He's like, well, yeah, like that's what I want. I said, well, that's not what you told me. You told me that you want to lose 20 pounds as quickly as possible. That's different. Because if you want to lose 20 pounds as quickly as possible, the first thing you can do, and I've made this joke before, the first thing you can do is go ahead and chop off an arm, maybe 2 arms. Boom. You don't need my help. Or, he's like, that's dumb. Or you could just stop eating. Like, don't eat until you've lost 20 pounds. Like, the human body can go for food without food for like 30 days, maybe even more, depending on the person. So you could just not eat until you've hit your goal weight. And he's like, well, that's absurd too. I'm like, yeah, it is, because as soon as you start eating, your body's going to put 20 pounds right back on, right? What you're telling me is that there's a version of you that you can picture in the future that is 20 pounds less than you are now, and has somehow gotten there in a sustainable, long-term, healthy, positive way. And you would like to be that guy. It's like, yes, that's what I'm telling you. Like, great, just as long as we're clear. And that's the thing, right? Is most of the time when somebody sits down to create some goals, they haven't often pictured what that goal looks like in the context of their life. They haven't often pictured heaven. They haven't often pictured hell. That's one of the problems with a weight loss goal. I lose 50 pounds. Now what? Is my life instantly better? Is my marriage instantly better? Do I instantly have more energy? Do I feel better about everything at work? Like, there's nothing magical about that particular number on the scale. And I'm not poo-pooing your weight loss journey or goals if that's something that you're working toward. I'm just encouraging you to answer this question for yourself. If I can picture the future, and we just talked about it here, maybe a year is too hard to picture, maybe 3 months from now, maybe 6 months from now, whatever it is, wherever your time frame is, if I can picture the best, what's the best case scenario? What does that look like for me? That really matters, because it gives us something to shoot for, and it helps to put into context those small little things we might do toward the trajectory of our goals. Do I want to lose 20 pounds as quickly as possible? No, that's the worst way to articulate that. I would like to keep both of my arms, and I don't want to go without food for 12 days, Alex. Thank you very much. But what I do want to do is do things today that will result in a 20 pounds lighter version of me in the future. And we can do that. That's different. And the same thing goes for hell, right? And why hell? Well, it helps that whole pain thing I was telling you, why the goals are insufficient. Maybe there's not enough pain and failure. Pain matters. This is one of the things that Janet was just talking about, being a mom with kids, and when you have kids, it hurts you when you fail as a parent. It hurts. Nothing hurts quite as deep when you fail as a parent. I have a friend of mine I know who sustained the business they were running through the COVID pandemic. And it was brutal. It was a brutal endeavor. There were so many sacrifices and difficult things that needed to be done in order to make that happen. But the pain of not being able to maintain the livelihood of their employees was enough to give it the best effort possible. And there were so many things that had to be done to do that. And that's the thing about betterment, is that if you don't take some time to meditate on the potential pain of not working forward, of not getting better, if you don't have some time to see what that looks like, if you don't have some time to think about that, then it's going to be really hard to make yourself stick to anything, right? And not to be morose here, I hope most of us can be motivated by the good, by the things that are positive and good. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, I'm way more motivated by pain than I am, idealistically moving toward the good. There are things that I didn't change about my nutrition until I was writhing in agony at 3 a.m. thinking I had colon cancer. And like, that's what it took for me to go, you know what, I should probably change XYZ. And not that I was eating crazy bad or anything at the time, but pain was a real motivator for me. Maybe for those of us who are a little more stubborn and hard-headed, we have to spend some more time thinking about hell and defining that out. Thanks for that little tidbit. 382-day fast in 1971 was the longest Guinness Book of World Records fast on record. Thanks for that in the chat. That's great. That's a long time to fast. That person must have had a lot of weight to burn through. So take a moment for yourself to try to visualize and try to describe heaven and hell. And I found for some people that it's better to just try to doodle it. Like, what's your picture of heaven look like? What's your picture of hell look like? We did something like this a few months ago in a workshop, and one gal in particular did a great picture where she showed her healthy, her back was strong, she was playing with her grandkids, and she's like, that's my heaven, that's what I want to be strong enough to be able to do that. And her hell was like, kicked back in a recliner smoking while her health, dwindled and she gained a bunch of weight. And she's like, this is hell to me. I'm having to watch everybody else live their life while I get fat and smoke myself to death. And like, I mean, she did it with stick figures and it was gorgeous. But the point is, if you understand what those things are, then it makes it easier on you when you're trying to find the path in the day to day. Because you can ask the question, is this making me stronger and able to play with my grandkids? Yes or no? Or is it tending me toward, the lazier version of me who eats and smokes themselves to death? Like, I mean, it's kind of a simple question to ask. Very, very few times does it ever get any more black and white than that. So give that to yourself if you can. It's a difficult thing to trudge through, but if you'll take a few minutes and do that, you can do that. The next thing is benchmarks. So we get the big overarching large vision picture done. The next question is benchmarks. And after this slide, I'll open it up for questions because benchmarks are important. Benchmarks are something to look forward to, and they are an opportunity for reflection. So for me, one of my most important benchmarks in my year is my birthday. I was born, I know it's cliche, but it is important to me. I was born on Christmas. So December 25th, right before the year turns over, is a powerful time for me to reflect on what this year has looked like and how I might make this next year better. What have I learned from this past year that I hope to implement in this coming year? And maybe it's idealistic and young of me, but in general, that's my goal. Is every year I want to make those things better. And so my birthday is a really powerful time of reflection for me. My anniversary just happens to be with my wife, just happens to be halfway through the year. So we got married in June. So I have two important benchmarks in a year that I have the opportunity both to be motivated in my own betterment. I want to show up well on my birthday. I want to start the new year off on the right foot. And I want to show up well for my anniversary. And I want this next year of my marriage to be powerful and good. And I'm not saying those have to be your benchmarks, but benchmarks are important because that health and fitness, heaven and hell thing that I was talking about, it's really cloudy and up in the air. Every year that goes by, it might change a little bit, but benchmarks are something that's on the calendar. It's like a dot, right? So here in the picture, you see a bench and it's kind of overlooking a scenic overview, and it's probably part of a hike, right? So you're on a journey and you come to a place where you can sit down and rest. And the nice thing about being on a journey, knowing that there's a benchmark up ahead, is that if I keep going, I'll get to that benchmark. It's very motivating. I get to rest up there. That would be good. And so I keep going, right? And I get to the benchmark and I get to reflect and I get to enjoy the scenery, right? And then I get up from the benchmark and I continue on my journey to the next one. So these could be birthdays, these could be holidays, they could be vacations or trips, maybe a reunion with the family or a reunion with some friends, maybe kiddos. Janet just said she got to go for a walk with her daughter. So maybe it's a reunion with your kiddos, or maybe it's a competition or event. It's something up ahead that you're going to have to train for and be a part of, like a 5K or a 10K or a triathlon or an obstacle course race or the belly dancing Olympics. That's an inside joke. But anyway, a benchmark is a powerful and important thing that keeps you engaged on your journey and gives it a time-bound quality, something to look forward to and a place from which to reflect. So I'm going to leave this open before we get to the measures and the who cares part. What questions or comments have I brought up for you guys that you'd like to discuss on vision or benchmarks? I lost you with the belly dancing Olympics, didn't I?
You didn't lose me with the belly dancing one. I'm just sitting here trying to think of benchmarks. My life is like so opposite of what it used to be. I'm just like not busy. and I think the real challenge for me is you don't make plans when you're hurting. You just kind of do things as you're able. And so I feel like I'm being called to be more deliberate, just like with my mindset. I mean, when we sit and we shape our mindsets and, we're very intentional about it. I just think I need to be more intentional about creating some personal benchmarks for myself and different things that I know will motivate me. Like I really love the whole check mark thing on my, that's motivating to me.
On your
Crossing
activity
things off the
monitor.
list.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when it gives me a little green check mark, I am so geeked. It's like, you know, it's like whatever. But yeah, I think I need to be more deliberate. And that's a real challenge for me.
Mm. There's a person in the group, I'm not going to name them, but one of their goals or one of their benchmarks for themselves is their dad's death anniversary, because this particular person wants to show up well for their dad. Like hey, I'm going to celebrate my dad's death anniversary. I have some prayers I'm going to pray. I'm going to visit his grave. It really matters to me that he sees me as the person who's done well this year. And it's an interesting way to look at life, but I think all of us have those personal and emotionally charged things that matter to us that we really just need to put on the calendar and create some intention around them. Like I'm going to approach this thing with intention. I'm going to approach my birthday with intention. I'm going to approach my dad's death anniversary with intention. I'm not saying that that's what you need to do, but that I am saying that when it's difficult to be deliberate arbitrarily, then taking some of those opportunities in life that have already been foisted on you, you didn't really have any control over them, and making those less arbitrary and more intentional is, at least I've seen that among clients of mine. It really adds a powerful aspect to the whole benchmark process. Thank you for those thoughts, and thanks for being honest. Other thoughts on benchmarks? Okay. Also, side note, we've created a benchmark for you in Better Daily called the Faithful 40. Not shameless plug, but the goal of community challenges like this is so that we all have our own personal calendar, but from a community perspective, if we have a communal calendar that lays out a few benchmarks for us, it's not our end all be all, but it definitely can teach us something about ourselves in the process. So I would encourage anybody listening that if you struggle to find those benchmarks, or even if you don't, adding something like a community challenge, a Faithful 40, where it's like, hey, I'm going to start on this day and I'm going to end on this day, and that's a benchmark. Those are things I can measure, and they're on the calendar, and I'm part of something bigger than me. That is that's a helpful thing too. Once upon a time, I hated challenges like that. I was like, mostly because anybody could do anything for a short period of time. And I found them to be particularly unhealthy in the health and fitness world. I'm going to do a 30-day challenge. I'm going to eat only these foods and none of those foods. You know what happens after that 30-day challenge is everything pendulum swings back, right? Because it's a very strict and rigid structure that you're fitting yourself into, and all of the momentum of your life pushes against that, right? Until the bars are lifted, and then everything goes by the wayside. But I like this idea of benchmark better, and the reason that the Faithful 40 challenge runs into this is because you get to make that commitment. You get to decide what your betterment commitment is during that time frame, and the community is holding you accountable during that time so that you can reach that benchmark and see what the difference is. Was it a good change that you made and you want to continue doing it? Great, nobody's stopping you. And now you have 40 days under your belt. It's kind of a habit by now, and it feels weird not to do it, whatever it is. And that's powerful and good. So I hope you guys find that helpful. If you have no other benchmarks you're shooting for, shoot for that one. We'll go from there. We do it every quarter, so 4 times a year you've got a benchmark. Now, measures these measures are, I like to think of them as the currency of betterment. Maybe that's a poor analogy, but currency, one of the things that matters about currency is proof of work. One of the reasons that gold has value is because you can't just create it out of thin air. You actually have to mine that and dig it up, and it's limited and fungible and divisible and all those things. So that said, measures on your journey are proof of work, and measures can range across the board. I've done a litany of measures as a trainer with people who are trying to create physical betterment for themselves. So at the top of the list is weight and BMI, mostly because it's really simple to measure. So you just step on a scale, and there it is. But there are better measures than just weight for your proof of work on your journey. We've got body composition and how your clothes fit. We've got progress pictures, how you actually look from the front, side, and back, performance metrics, strength, endurance, agility, power, balance, flexibility, and speed. You can also have things like health markers and blood values. Maybe one of your goals is to get off of a particular medication, and you have to show your blood pressure to be a certain amount in order to get off of the medication, right? Energy levels. How do I feel on a day-to-day basis? Do I have the energy to do the things I would like to do? Relationships. What's the health of the relationships around me? I've noticed this is extremely important measure that many overlook in a betterment journey, because they're like, oh, I need to lose 10 pounds, or oh, I need to train for this marathon, and then inevitably I'm on the phone with a client and they're like, yeah, my wife didn't really like that I couldn't go on date night or something. Not that I tell people not to go on date night, but that I didn't eat chocolate cake on date night or something like that. And the relationships in our life and the quality of them, and how well we're investing in them, those sorts of things can be powerful measures of progress in our lives. And then knowledge. A lot of people learn many powerful and important things on their betterment journey, and it would be a miss not to count that as one of the measures. What's this thing that, how do I know whether or not I've made progress? Well, list all the things you know about your body now that you didn't, right? Or list all the things you know about your nutrition now that you didn't a year from now, or list all the things that you know about how to get better rest, or what to do when this hurts, or how to do a pull-up or whatever, right? And then I put here, watch out for inflation. This is probably a bad joke, but it's a real thing, and that is that some measures are inflated in the importance we put on them compared to our journey. I'll say that again. Some measures in our mind are inflated in importance compared to how important they actually are for where we're trying to go, right? So for instance, I have a client I'm working with right now that they're extremely interested in whether or not the number on the scale is changing. They've dropped 4 pant sizes, and their wife is constantly complimenting them on how much better they look than they did 8 weeks ago, but they've only lost about 2 pounds. And so for them, they're like, I just don't understand why the number's not changing. I'm like, wait. You're wearing 4 sizes smaller pants, right? Yeah, okay. And your wife's like, hey man, your gut's looking great. Like, you're actually losing that dad bod. Nice job, keep it up. So you got that going for you, but you're upset because you think you should weigh 4 less pounds than you do right now. Like, let's put all these measures in perspective. And so my challenge to you is, when you create measures around your goal, your proof of work, to not let any of them outweigh their actual benefit, their actual meaningfulness with regard to your goal. Like, if I'm trying to be injury free and stronger, then sure, body composition is important, but maybe I don't need to be 8% body fat, maybe 10% is fine if my ultimate goal is that. I mean, if, hey, your ultimate goal is to be an underwear model, then fine, great. You're going to need to get on in that 6% range, but make sure that that's the most important thing to you before you go doing that. So I have a few things going on in the chat here, but measures are an important thing. So I want to open it up for questions here, just in case I've touched a nerve or created a spot for questions. Go right ahead.
And I will tell you, Alex, I've liked that 100 runs for a year. That's been fun to stay motivated, you know,
Mm.
it's been a good measure to, like Saturday will be 70 and I'm like, woohoo, I'm down, down to my last 30,
30 more to go. Like,
Yeah. So, I mean, it's fun, it's just been it's something I would have been running anyway, but it'll give me the little kick in the butt to go do the run by myself when running partners out of town or something like that, so
mm.
that's
Yeah,
been,
I'm glad to hear that. I've heard from some of my walkers that we need to have like a walk 365 or something like that because they're like, I'm not a runner.
yeah,
Okay.
that's
Fair enough.
good. Well, I'm also doing, because we're having a step challenge at work right now. And I used to like, be obnoxiously competitive with it and decided to have a real life this year. So my goal this year was just to try to get 10,000 steps a day.
Mm.
I've been pretty good with that. But, my average is, like 11,000 since it started a month ago. So I figured, it's just sort of nice to be like, oh, okay, I'm being a little extra intentional about going out and doing that last loop to, make sure I get it.
Yeah.
Little
Yeah.
things like that are pretty manageable and sort of give you the little kick in the butt to get the last bit done.
I love that. And I got somebody, it's like, yes, we could definitely count our walk numbers. Do that. Somebody needs to start a walk 300 or something.
Yeah. It's fun just, setting how many steps you want to get a day is a good way to do it.
Awesome. Any other thoughts on measures here? All right. This is my favorite part. This is the part I don't see in most. Oh no, it's not my favorite part. It's my second favorite part. The action portion before we get to who cares. The action portion is very simple, and I don't know how prayer works for you, but to me this is a very simple sort of prayer. It's, what do I need to start? And that sort of answer comes relatively quickly. And what do I need to stop? And this is where the rubber meets the road, right? Some people might be really good at making to-do lists, and it's the same process. What do I need to do today? And there's a big giant list sometimes that just you keep writing it down and you keep thinking about it and you're like, oh dang man, I have a lot to do. I make my to-do list for the week. My daily to-do lists just get too big. So this question is easy to ask, and writing down answers is actually not too hard either. The question is, which one of the answers is the most important thing to move on? It's the cross between what's going to get you the best results with the least amount of bandwidth. What's going to get you the best results with the least amount of bandwidth? That's the best place to start. If you don't have any trouble starting, then fine, you can start 10 things at once. But if you're going to make progress, if you're going to make that 1% better every day, it really comes down to these two questions. What do I need to start? What do I need to stop? And this is actually rooted in biology. You're continually becoming something new. That process is happening in every cell in your body right now, that your body's rebuilding itself anew out of the things that you ate in the last 24 hours, and it will continue to do so. The newness process is directed by the expression of your genetic potential, meaning that at birth, your DNA was, or not at birth, excuse me, at conception, your DNA was coded such that you're you now. Like that's the message, that's the blueprint. And the new thing that you become is a result of that expression of that blueprint. And you would like things to be better than they are right now. And I'm not saying you take for granted the moment. In gratitude, in humility, you can still want things to be better than they are right now. You can still want you to show up better than you do right now. And what's powerful about that is that you do have a small daily say in the things that influence the expression of your genetic potential. Whether or not you exercise today changes whether or not certain parts of your DNA are turned on versus turned off. Whether or not you ate well today has something to say about what parts of your DNA is turned on versus parts of your DNA that is turned off. And so you do have a daily say. that 1%. I say 1%, maybe it's 0.5%, maybe it's 3%, I don't know. But it's 1%. You have a small say in how you progress today because of what you decide to start doing and what you decide to stop doing, or whether you decide to continue with the changes that you've moved in. And so I know you know that, and I think that this slide gets into the core of one of the reasons why it's hard to make that happen. And this is the who cares, right? In Proverbs it says, pity the man who falls down and has no one to pick him up. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. This is the portion of your goals, who cares, that will actually sustain you for the long term. A lot of people find this really interesting. There was a very large meta-analysis done on diets and exercise programs for weight loss. And I use weight loss not because it's the most important goal, but it's the most studied thing, and it's easily measurable. Do you know that the 2 things that mattered more than anything else about these programs, it wasn't whether or not they were vegan, it wasn't about whether or not there was animal products involved, it wasn't even whether or not, you know, you had enough plant polyphenols or enough rest or whatever. It was, did the weight loss program have a social support system, and did the weight loss program have a professional support system? Because it turns out what matters more than anything, whether you're counting your calories or not, or whether you're tracking macros or not, or whether or not you're eating carrots or wheat or gluten or dairy or anything else, is whether or not you have support from a social perspective and support from a professional perspective. And when you read that study, that study was published in 2017. When you read that study, it's really mind-boggling, because what that means is, with this big thing that a lot of people wrestle with, the answer is to have somebody they look up to, admire, and trust, who knows what they're talking about, in their circle, and have other people in their circle who are also working toward similar goals. That's really it. That's the thing that makes weight loss possible. And even, let's say it's not weight loss, you know, in this picture you've got this guy trying to climb a rock, and you got 3 people who really care that this guy doesn't fall off of the rock. Maybe they like him and they don't want him to fall. Maybe they don't want their climbing journey to end abruptly in an injury, because it's a pain in the butt to carry somebody off the mountain after they hurt their ankle, right? Whatever the case is, when you have somebody who cares, and maybe multiple people who care about whether or not you're going to achieve said goal, it makes a difference. So the ideal is to surround yourself with people who want the best for you. And you know, maybe you don't have control over who's in your immediate vicinity. It's one of the reasons Better Daily exists, is to attract the people to it who know that betterment's possible, that they would like to be better, whatever that means to them, and they would like to do it in a community of people who are doing that too. And then also that you can find a way to make your personal betterment less personal. This is a really big deal, and it's not easy. It's not easy to do this. So for instance, Run 100, Janet talked about it just a second ago. The Run 100 is one of my ways that I've made something that's personal to me less personal. It's not easy for me to run. My joints aren't always up for it. It's difficult to find time as a dad sometimes. Arkansas is just terrible weather half the time for running. Either it's raining, or it's hot and humid, or it's cold and windy. There's very few times of the year that it's, you know, just right. I don't mind running in the heat, but I'm a big baby about running in the cold. But I know that running is important to me. I also know that in the past, I've tried to measure it via miles, and it never turns out right. I either try to go too fast, or I run too many miles and I end up injured, right? So what I did is started saying, you know what, I'm going to post to my community. I'm going to post to anybody who cares. I'm going to post a thumbs up picture, because this wasn't easy. And I'm going to count my runs this year. And I would like to average about 2 a week. Gee, that's 100 runs. Wonder what would happen if I could do 100 runs this year. And that was me making my personal betterment less personal. It was me saying, you know, this is hard for me, and so I'm going to make this less personal. I'm going to invite other people into it. And thankfully I've got a couple other crazies in the group who appreciate that. They're like, yeah, I'll run 100 with you. And they're running more than me. I think I'm I think I'm in the 60s still on the run 100, and these guys are hitting 70 now, which is great. But the point is, you can do that with anything. At least in this community, you can do that with just about anything. There are people here who are trying to get better at being conscious about their food intake, that is journaling their food. There are people here who are trying to improve how many steps they walk in a day, or maybe just get consistent walking their steps every day. There are people in this community who are really trying to figure out their sleep stuff and deal with their sleep issues. There are people here who they're really just, it would be great to have a positive mindset today. And so sharing your mindset and linking other people to that and connecting them to what you're up to can make your personal betterment less personal. And there are questions that come up that are worth asking. But the thing is when you make your personal betterment less personal, when it matters to other people, whether or not you achieve XYZ in your life, it starts to matter to you more too. I was talking to a guy today, and I'm very thankful for this conversation because it was timely. And he said, I'm really good at doing the things that people depend on me for. But when I know that what I do isn't going to affect them, I just don't. So, it's not like anybody's depending on you to eat enough protein today, or at least not in the immediate. But that eating enough protein is healthy and good for you, and is good for your muscle structure, and is good for your long-term hormonal progress and all those things. Like it's good for your recovery from your workouts. Fine. But being good for you isn't always enough to make yourself do it. But if there's another person in the group trying to improve their protein intake too, and you said, hey, I got 100 grams of protein today, how'd you do? That makes a difference. And you'll do it. There are many times this year that I did not want to run. It was too hot, didn't have enough time. It's whatever. But I was like, hey, it's the run 100. I got to keep up with these guys. Can't stop now. I got to average 2 a week, man. I do the math in my head. I'm like, we're 8 months into the year. So that's how many runs? How many do I need to be at? Somewhere in the late 60s. Anyway, the point is, that's powerful and good. And I encourage you, if you're in the group and you're using it this way, keep it up. If you're not, and there's something you haven't been sticking to, man, try to wrap your head around how you're going to use the group for that, especially in this Faithful 40 challenge, how you're going to connect with people that it will matter to them, whether or not you achieve this for yourself. And note that in a healthy relationship, you get out at least what you put in. So if you're encouraging people and you're asking about how their goals and stuff are going, then you'll get the same thing in return, and maybe even more than that. That's been my experience, at least. So there's a couple things in the chat box here. Our Weight Watchers concept. Okay. Good chatter. Keep it going. So just as a quick recap, this is actually a small part of the Faithful 40 registration. But why, what, how, and who? And if you need this sheet, if you need this directive and you want a copy of it, just shoot me a message or an email. I'd be happy to send it your way. This is in your slide notes, so you have a copy of it already in your email. But these are the questions, and you can flip them on their head if that makes more sense to you and is good. But don't skip over them. It can be helpful to you. I personally revisit this in my life at least twice a year, and I would recommend doing something similar if you know there's better to be had and you're not really sure how best to get started. So I'm going to leave it open for questions. One last call for the Faithful 40 challenge. It's not the last call. You're going to hear me talk about the Faithful 40 for the next 10 days. So get excited. But what questions, comments, concerns, or thoughts are out there to end our evening?
Hey, do you have a way of keeping track of who's all registered so far?
I do.
Did I? I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I did.
Yes, you're registered. You have your green check mark.
Oh yes. See, I love that. I'm accomplishing goals. I ain't even moved off my bed. Woohoo.
That's the spirit.
Thank you though so much for this fitness tracker. I've loved it. I really have loved it.
Glad to hear it. Good. Nice. Anybody else not sure if they're registered? I can go. I can go. That's good.
Night,
When
Pat.
when you register, by the way, you should, if everything's working well in the software sphere, you should get an email with a copy of what it is that you said your goals were. And the goal is so that you can print those things out and have them readily available for you. Because once upon a time, I didn't know any better, but registration forms and stuff sent me the information, but you were like, okay, I guess it got where it was supposed to go. I don't even remember what my goal was in the Faithful 40 challenge, but Alex does, so that's cool. That so anyway, that's another way you can confirm that for yourself if that came through. Great. Well, I hope that this was helpful for you guys and valuable, and that everybody has a marvelous, marvelous rest of your week. I'm super excited to start this challenge with you. I've got some goals that I'm working toward, and I appreciate you guys for being those who care in the corner. So keep up the good work, and I will see you guys in the group soon, okay? Good night.